discovered how many other people were also being aware of being lied to. It led to what was known as the White Revolution and Perestroika and the downfall of the communist state. And it all came about because of the way in which their news was delivered and the time zone synchronization and the fact that all these people got disgusted and walked out and would walk their dogs rather than listen to that bilge anymore.
Very interesting. So what about then the 100th monkey kind of idea? The more people that get awake, the more people
will become awake.
Yeah. That seems relevant and reasonable, doesn't it?
Sure, and in fact it works at the energetic level.
Yeah, of course.
Because if I'm awake and aware and I'm starting to look around me and I'm engaging with universe around me in an other than stupefied fashion, then I'm going to put out a higher level of vibration which will affect those individuals around me.
I think so, yeah. Feels like Clif High is with us, and we have so many emails, so many phone calls. If you're on hold, stay right there. We'll get to you. Stick around. Thanks for your patience. 888-663-6386. It's a cinch. All of us listening here this morning, and once again, you can hear the rain coming down in dripping springs on our tin roof in our studio. I mean, it's really just doesn't stop. Whitewater rafting on our creek. Anyway, it's pretty much a cinch between you and I that we know that gold and silver is going to go up from here. We don't believe it. We know it. Personally, I don't think it's going to ever go straight up. I think our man Andrew Goss, who we have on each week, teaches us it's kind of a ratchet thing. The boys don't allow it to go kind of straight up because everybody gets scared and all of that. But we know it's going to go up. Now, there's a lot of ways you can invest in gold and silver. You can get these exchange-traded funds. You can have somebody store the gold for you and all of this stuff. And I tell you what, I've lost enough in my life with paper gold and silver to know that that's not the way I will ever do it again. Well, except for maybe now and then, wow, here coming down, maybe doing a little bit of a silver call or a gold call or something like that for 3 or 4 months. It's pretty, you can make a little bit of money that way. But for my money, after my years of hanging out with Andrew Goss, every Saturday on One Radio Network, a currency historian, is physical possession is the absolute safest, easiest, best way to hold gold and silver, in my opinion. And I also think that real American money is the best because it's a private transaction. You will not get a 1099 from Andrew Goss when you buy or sell gold or silver coins if it's real money. You don't have to. Now, I'm not suggesting you don't pay taxes on it, but it is your job to report that, so don't forget. Come April 15th, don't forget to report your buying and selling of those gold and silver coins on your tax return. Because if you don't report it, it's not going to get reported, and you won't pay taxes on it. So you don't want to do that because you know the law. So don't forget. But you will not get any paperwork. That's the difference between gold and silver, real American coins, and bullion. You do get a 1099 with bullion. It's a big difference. Also, in the history, they've never tried to recall bullion or make it illegal to trade bullion or make you a gold hoarder, which could be done again. People say, well, maybe we'll do that with gold and silver coins. Andrew doesn't think so, and I agree. Well, my agreement doesn't mean anything. Andrew doesn't think so because the boys, the powers that be, you know what? Most of them own gold coin collections because they know it's a very interesting, private way to store their wealth. So they don't want to mess with it either. Most really rich, wealthy people have coin collections. It's just the way it is. So there you have it. That's my pitch for Andrew Goss. Listen to his archives on One Radio Network. Probably 250 interviews. This guy knows his stuff. He understands the boys. He's been at it for 35 years and how the deal works. And it's all on OneRadioNetwork.com. If you'd like to reach Andrew Goss, here's his phone number. 800-468-2646. That's 800-468-2646. AndyGoss.com. 800-468-2646.
Know the source. One Radio Network. Talk to Patrick now. 1-888-663-6386 or email patrick@oneradionetwork.com.
We are waxing and waning, philosophizing, having a great time with Clif High, Half Past Human. Now, your latest report was just come out, what, Clif, 2 weeks ago?
A little over that, I think, yeah.
And it's only $10.
Yeah.
That's a great thing.
It's a good price. It gives everybody a heads up. If you're unemployed or you're on Social Security and that kind of thing, and you absolutely can't afford it, send an email to Kathy at Half Past Human and explain that, and we'll send you a free copy.
Oh, that's great. Half Past Human. 888-663-6386. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Scott, Los Angeles.
Scott, go ahead.
Hey, Cliff. Well, first, it would be really cool if you would make an appearance again in GLP voice chat. That was great when you did that in the past.
With the gulpers, yeah, okay.
Yeah, no doubt.
What are the gulpers?
It's just a forum, the GLP, and of course you put in a U in there, gulp.
I see.
Yeah, but anyhow, it was very entertaining in the interaction and all that. Cliff, I got a few questions for you. I'm just going to kind of spit them out. A couple reports ago, you indicated that there would be something significant on 7/7, the first 10 days of August of this year. And let me just end that by saying that if you're right about what's coming in November, then you probably won't be selling any more reports. But
what's coming in November?
Well, hold on. But would you agree, Cliff, that if you are wrong about November, you probably won't be selling any more reports?
Oh, wait a minute. Here,
I would agree, yes. I would agree in both cases.
Okay. What are you predicting? What are you forecasting for November?
We have a tipping point that shows up in our data. Tipping point, the last time we had one was September 11th of 2001. The tipping point we have now is similar to that tipping point in that all the entities are shoving all these data sets together and aggregating and congregating in a dense mass around November 8th that continues until November 11th when it breaks loose, and then we get about 2+ months of release language. The odds don't favor selling reports after that, simply because if I'm wrong, it's, boy, my data is way off and I've got to retool everything. Because this is such a clear indicator that something big-ish is going to impact us.
Something as big as September 11th.
Oh, much larger than September 11th, which was an engineered attack by the powers that be on the populace. And it was all engineered from the get-go all the way through. No, something very large is coming. It also has participation in our case in November from the Terra entity, and I don't see that as being part of a false flag. So it may be coincident. We may have, a freak hurricane at the same time that we have global thermonuclear war, but it's also the Terra entity is also going to impact us in November in part of the tipping point in some way.
If you were on a game show and had to guess? What do you think it is? What do the linguistics say it is?
The closest thing I can anticipate at this stage is that the Israelis attack Iran, and there is a huge, bloody 4-day war, and it takes us 2 months to sort out all the dead.
Wow. What's the price of oil?
It's immaterial.
Hey, Cliff.
Wait, what do you mean by immaterial?
That at the point that the war goes off, there won't be enough of a regular society thereafter for the cost of oil to be meaningful. There won't be deliveries of oil, so why worry about it?
A regular society here?
Yeah, sure, because we're talking about something where there is such a total... most of our military is killed in the Middle East in the first 4 days. Half of the Israeli Air Force is destroyed in the first, probably 30 minutes, if I'm correct about how I'm reading the data interpretation, which I'm probably not, so it's okay to talk about it. 4 cities in Israel become glass. There's a radioactive something. I want to say that the Israelis use a bunker buster. They miss, and they cause an oil volcano again in Iran to start spewing radioactive smoke that impacts most of Indonesia and the Chinese and Vietnamese coastlines. all the way up into Siberia, and then it comes across into Alaska, although it's less radioactive at that point. But you see my point. It's a really nasty situation. So I'm sure I'm quite wrong, because anything I can imagine would not happen. I did not imagine the circumstances that developed from September 11th, but I was accurate in that there was an attack on the Money Center. And George and I discussed the attack on the Money Center days and weeks before the actual attack on September 11th. So, but I didn't, at the time, it never would have occurred to me to associate the Twin Towers with the Money Center of the planet.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I would have seen it as an attack on New York, maybe, or something like that, as opposed to an attack on those specific buildings.
Right.
So the fact that I'm seeing this in a broad brush means that it'll be very much smaller than I anticipate. However, what is clear is the 2 months of release language afterwards. And so there will be a large involvement of the populace of the planet discussing whatever it was that occurred in November.
Hey, Cliff.
Yeah.
With regard to August, the first 10 days of August and July 7th,
Yeah.
can you expand on what we saw or didn't see?
In August, there was all kinds of stuff that occurred. The issue for us is the level of visibility probably won't be visible until the end of September. In other words, the derivative crises that we're about to undergo had their roots in what was occurring in the first 10 days of August, and it seriously impacted the Obama administration, although we did not see it and probably won't see it hit the language until the end of the month. It might be even into October or more. But apparently what has happened is the crisis in confidence, or whatever, however you want to say it, for the entire derivatives mess reached a critical point in those first 10 days of August, and we're actually in another phase of it right now. And the problem is this: the European banks, or the European credit situation, is just the excuse for what's going on. Every so often, it used to be every 3 months, and then it got down, it's eventually ratcheted down now to where it's happening every 2 weeks. If you follow the stock market, you'll see that it's in this 2-week period of almost a sine wave, up and down, and then relative to the language being used, I don't know about the prices. But the issue right at the moment is the European debt crisis. Well, 2 weeks ago it was we had an issue that caused this anxiety. So the, quote, recovery will never extend beyond 2 weeks. We're in a cycle that is ratcheting down, and when the periodicity of the cycle reaches a certain point, that's when we get into the continuous crises. And by my thinking, it'll probably be around the end of October. Now, there's one other thing that occurred in August that we cannot lose sight of, and that is that on August 1, we had that solar whatever, okay, that NASA doesn't even have a name for it. It was so violent and everything. That solar storm was predicted by Patrick Garrell's work. It was coincident with all the other stuff that was going on, and whether or not there's any astro relationship to it is immaterial, but it will reoccur also coincidentally on October 27th. We'll get another one of those. And so in the background, the fact that it was predicted and the fact that it occurred with the level of violence that it did has a whole lot of the shadow people and the powers that be really, the minions more than the powers that be, are really upset. And there's a lot of language leaking out about that. So I think that was perhaps the largest precipitating crisis we've got.
Look out.
Yeah, and if we're correct, and it happens again on October 27th, that's close enough to the 8th through the 11th that you could maybe stretch your imagination around the idea that something happens relative to the sun on the 27th of October that precipitates